Hello students, welcome to Shiv Jyoti Educational Group Kota. This is Barkha Gaur, your biology teacher. So children, how are you? Fine? And how are your studies going on? I hope you are going well. In this video, we'll understand the remaining topics of chapter 2, that is sexual reproduction in flowering plants. The topics which we are going to cover in this session are outbreeding devices, pollen pistil interaction, artificial hybridization, double fertilization, seed formation, apomixis, and etc. So children, I hope you remember our first video. In that we have learned about the gamete formation and pollination. Now we'll continue that chapter with the topic outbreeding devices. What are outbreeding devices, children? Actually, you have seen the many flowering plants produce hermaphrodite flowers. I think you know hermaphrodite flowers means bisexual flowers. And pollen grains are likely to come in contact with the stigma of the same flower. So it is easy for a bisexual flower to transfer pollen from anther to stigma. But repeated self-pollination leads to inbreeding depression. Now what is this inbreeding depression? Means all the time if a plant or if a flower is doing self-pollination, they have a problem which is called as inbreeding depression. Actually, flowering plants have developed many devices to discourage the self-pollination and to encourage cross-pollination. Actually, when a plant or flower is cross-pollinated, they receive variety of genes. They are not genetically similar. The flowers prefer to do the cross-pollination, whether it is bisexual or unisexual. Now first we will learn how autogamy is prevented by the flowers. How they get escaped from this inbreeding depression and how self-pollination or autogamy is prevented. So let us see some of the methods to prevent autogamy. In some species, pollen release and stigma receptivity are not synchronized. Means they either the pollen release at different time or the stigma become receptive at different time. Means these both activities are not synchronized. Either the pollen is released before the stigma becomes receptive or stigma becomes receptive much before the release of pollen. Second, in some other species, the anther and the stigma are placed at different positions. Means they are far from each other so that the pollen cannot come in contact with the stigma of the same flower. Both these devices prevent autogamy. The third device to prevent inbreeding is self-incompatibility. What is this incompatibility? This is a genetic mechanism and prevents self-pollination from the same flower or the other flower from fertilizing the ovules by inhibiting pollen germination or pollen tube growth in the pistil. Another device to prevent self-pollination is the production of unisexual flower. Means if the flower is unisexual, there is no chance of self-pollination. If both male and female flowers are present on the same plant, such as castor and maize, it prevents autogamy but not geitonogamy. So these are the different ways by which autogamy can be prevented. Now ways to prevent both autogamy and geitonogamy means presence of male and female flowers on different plants such that each plant is either male or female. And this mechanism is seen in papaya. Now when the flower or the plant decides or when the flower become mature, means its anther are dehiscing or it becomes mature and stigma is also ready to receive the pollen, then what happens? See, in nature any pollen can land on any stigma, whether it is of the same species or it is of different species. Now how they are able to communicate with each other, whether the pollen which is landing on it is of its own species or is of different. So this is what pollen pistil interactions. pollination does not guarantee the transfer of right type of pollen. They are not there is no surety whether the correct pollen will land on the stigma. Often pollen of wrong type, either from other species or from the same plant, also land on the stigma. The pistil has the ability to recognize the pollen. So number one thing is pistil can recognize the correct pollen, whether it is of right type or it is of wrong type. If it is of right type, what will happen? The pistil will accept the pollen and promotes post-pollination events, means further growth of pollen tube will take place and leads to fertilization. If the pollen is of wrong type, the pistil rejects the pollen by preventing pollen germination on the stigma or the pollen tube growth in the style. The ability of the pistil to recognize the pollen followed by its acceptance or rejection is the result of continuous dialogue between pollen grain and the pistil. So they both communicate with each other. This dialogue is mediated by chemical components of the pollen interacting with those of pistil. It is only the recent years that botanists have been able to identify some of the pollen and pistil components and the interactions leading to the recognition followed by acceptance or rejection. Then what happens? You can see in the diagram, different pictures are given in this figure A. Look at the picture. Figure A is showing pollen grains germinating on the stigma. You can see in the diagram. Figure B, it is showing pollen tubes growing through the style. Now look at the figure C. This figure is showing longitudinal section of pistil showing path of pollen tube growth. So this whole picture is showing how pollen tube arises when the pollen land on the stigma, and through the pollen tube male gametes are transferred to the female gamete. Figure D, this is the enlarged view of an egg apparatus showing entry of pollen tube into the synergid. Figure E, it is showing the discharge of male gametes into the synergid and the movement of sperm, one into the egg and the other into the central cell. So this is how pollen pistil interaction is a dynamic process involving pollen recognition followed by promotion or inhibition of the pollen. Then the pollen tube reaches the ovary and enters the ovule through the micropyle. Then through the filiform apparatus it reaches synergids. In this way the pollen tube grows. Now this is how in nature pollination and fertilization occurs. But when it is when we talk about the artificial hybridization, means the breeders, when the breeders is interested in crossing different species and often genera to combine desirable characters to produce commercially superior varieties. So in this era we cannot just depend on the nature. Our scientists continuously trying to get the better variety of the plants. So this is done by artificial hybridization. Why it is done? It is done to improve crop yield. It is a part of green revolution. So in this method what is done? It is essential to ensure that right kinds of pollen grains are used and the stigma is protected from unwanted pollen grains. Now how it can be achieved, let us see. So actually artificial hybridization is one of the major approach of crop improvement program. In such crossing experiments, it is important to make sure that only desired pollen grains are used for pollination and the stigma is protected from contamination from unwanted pollen. This is achieved by two methods, that is emasculation and bagging techniques. You can understand with the help of these diagrams. Now let us see. The first figure is showing emasculation. What is done in this? If the female parent bears bisexual flowers, Removal of anthers from the flower bud before the anther dehisces using a pair of forceps is necessary. So you can see in the figure, a person is using scissors to cut the anthers. That is, removal of anther is done, and this removal of anther is what? Emasculation. So the anthers are removed, and from the desired plant the pollens are dusted on the stigma. The second part is bagging. The emasculated flowers have to be covered with a bag of suitable size, generally made up of butter paper, to prevent contamination of its stigma with unwanted pollen. So we have to protect the stigma from unwanted pollen. After putting the desired pollen, we have to cover the stigma. This process is called bagging. In the second picture, you can see how bagging is done with the help of butter paper. When the stigma is bagged, flower attains receptivity. Mature pollen grains collected from anthers of the male parent are dusted on the stigma, and the flowers are rebagged. Again they are bagged, and the fruits are allowed to develop. So these two techniques are used for artificial hybridization. If the female parent produces unisexual flowers, there is no need for emasculation. The female flower buds are bagged, only bagging is done before the flowers open. When the stigma becomes receptive, pollination is carried out using the desired pollen. Means they are not allowed to pollinate naturally. And then after putting the desired pollen, the flower is rebagged. So you understand, children? Okay, our next topic is double fertilization. So double fertilization is actually a characteristic of angiosperms. Why it is called double fertilization? I think you must be remembering that we have studied it in class 10th also, but never mind, we will discuss it once again. The double fertilization means the fertilization is taking place 2 times. How it happens? Let us see. As we have seen in the development of female gametophyte, after entering one of the synergids, the pollen tube releases 2 male gametes. Means 2 male gametes are released into the cytoplasm of synergids. One of the male gamete moves towards the egg cell and fuses with its nucleus, thus completing the syngamy. So the first fertilization which is taking place between male gamete and the egg cell is called syngamy, and the product formed, it results in the formation of a diploid cell called zygote. Clear? The other male gamete moves towards the 2 polar nuclei. You can see in the picture, towards the 2 polar nuclei located in the central cell. We have seen in the development of female gametophyte, and fuses with them to produce triploid primary endosperm nucleus. As you can see, there were 2 nucleus in polar nuclei and 1 nucleus of female gamete. When these 3 nucleus combine, then primary endosperm nucleus is formed, which is triploid. Means 3 nucleus are there, therefore it is called triploid. This is known as triple fusion because 3 nucleus are fusing. So we have seen 2 types of fusion occurred. One is syngamy and one is triple fusion. They take place in an embryo sac. So this phenomena is termed as double fertilization. Then the central cell after triple fusion becomes primary endosperm cell and develops into endosperm, while the zygote develops into embryo. So 2 things will be formed. One is embryo, which develops from zygote, and one is endosperm, which develops from primary endosperm cell. Now what happens after fertilization? After fertilization, as I told you, 2 development take place. One is of endosperm and one is of embryo, and maturation of ovules into seeds and ovaries into fruits. So ovules convert into seeds and ovaries converts into fruits. Now let us see that how endosperm is formed. Endosperm actually develops before embryo development. First endosperm is formed, then embryo is formed. Why? So that the primary endosperm is available for the development of embryo, because endosperm provides nutrition to the developing embryo. So first endosperm is formed, then embryo is formed. Actually, the cells of endosperm are filled with reserve food materials that are used for nutrition of the developing embryo. Then what happens next? The primary endosperm nucleus repeatedly divides to give rise to free nuclei. Then the stage of development is called free nuclear endosperm. Then subsequently cell wall formation occurs and the endosperm becomes cellular. So first of all, only nucleus will be formed, then cell wall is also formed. The number of free nuclei formed before cellularization varies greatly. Means in some plants number of free nuclei may be different and some in different. The coconut water, we all are familiar with the coconut water. From tender coconut that you are familiar with is nothing but free nuclear endosperm. So this is an example of free nuclear endosperm. It is made up of thousands of nuclei and the surrounding white kernel is the cellular endosperm. Endosperm may either be completely consumed by the growing embryo or retained in the mature seed. So on the basis of endosperm used, the plants can be divided into two. Either they fully consume the endosperm, or it is retained in the mature seed, as in coconut, and in pea and beans it is consumed. So we can understand by this that dicot seeds में the endosperm is completely consumed, whereas in monocot seeds the endosperm is retained. Now let us see how embryo development takes place. Embryo develops at the micropylar end of the embryo sac where the zygote is situated. Most zygotes divide only after a certain amount of endosperm is formed. This we have already discussed. So this is an adaptation to provide assured nutrition to the developing embryo, so that the nutrition is available to the embryo. Though the seeds differ greatly, the early stages of embryo development are similar in both monocot and dicot. You can see in the picture, this figure depicts the stages of embryogeny in a dicot embryo. This is what showing how the dicot embryo is developed. The zygote is giving rise to proembryo. You can see, and subsequently to the globular embryo, then it is converting into heart-shaped embryo, and then into fully mature embryo. So this is the way how development takes place. The first one figure, A figure is showing fertilized embryo sac, showing zygote and primary embryo endosperm nucleus, and second figure B is showing the stages in embryo development in a dicot. If we talk about dicot embryo, it consists of an embryonal axis. You can see in this figure. A dicot embryo consists of an embryonal axis and two cotyledons. Look at this picture. Two cotyledons are there. The portion of embryonal axis above the level of cotyledon is called epicotyle. Okay, the portion of embryonal axis above the level of cotyledon is called epicotyle, which contains plumule, which will give rise to shoot. And the portion below the axis is called hypocotyle, which contains the radicle, and it is going to give rise to root. And root tip is covered by the root cap, which helps in the penetration into the soil. So this was dicot embryo. Now let us look monocot embryo. It is little bit different from dicot embryo. Now after learning this, we'll be able to differentiate between dicot embryo and monocot embryo. So children, let us see the structure of monocot embryo, how development takes place. So as we have learned in the previous classes, dicot embryo contains two cotyledon while monocot contain only one cotyledon. In grass it is known as scutellum. We'll not call it as cotyledon, but we'll call it as scutellum. And you can see in the picture also, it is situated at one side of the embryonal axis. At its lower end, the embryonal axis has the radicle and the root cap enclosed in the coleorhiza. The coleorhiza is there, which is covering root cap. The epicotyle lies above the level of scutellum and has the shoot apex. So this will give rise to shoot. And leaf primordia enclosed in hollow structures called coleoptiles. So coleoptile will cover the shoot part and coleorhiza will cover the root. So this was how development of embryo takes place. Now after embryo is formed, the formation of seed and fruit will take place. Let us see the development of seeds. In angiosperm, seed is the final product of sexual reproduction. Why sexual reproduction is taking place actually? So that the plant gets a seed. It is often described as a fertilized ovule. We can call seed as a fertilized ovule. Seeds are formed inside the fruits. This is the characteristic of angiosperms. A seed typically consists of seed coat, cotyledons and an embryonal axis. The cotyledons of the embryo are simple structure, generally thick and swollen due to storage of food reserves, as in legumes. You can see the figure of first figure, which is showing dicot seed. The cotyledons of the embryo are simple, generally thick, swollen due to storage of food reserve. Mature seeds may be non-albuminous or albuminous. Now what are albuminous seed and what are non-albuminous seed? Non-albuminous seeds have no residual endosperm. Non-albuminous seeds have no residual endosperm and it is completely consumed during embryo development, for example pea and groundnut. And albuminous seed retain a part of endosperm. So means albuminous seed are monocot and non-albuminous are dicot. So albuminous seeds retain a part of endosperm as it is not completely used up during embryo development. Examples? Yes, wheat, maize, barley, castor and sunflower. Sometimes seeds such as black pepper and wheat have remnants of nucellus. Sometimes nucellus remains there. So in that case they are called as perisperm. So this residual persistent nucellus is known as perisperm. Now what happens? Integuments of ovules. We have seen the structure of ovule in which integuments are also there. So after seed formation, integuments of ovules becomes hard as tough protective seed coats. The micropyle remains as a small pore in the seed coat, and this micropyle facilitates the entry of oxygen and water into the seed during germination. As the seed matures, the water content is reduced and seed becomes dry. 10 to 15% moisture remains there. The general metabolic activity of the embryo slows down because it is becoming dry. The embryo may enter a state of inactivity, means no further development will take place, it will become inactive, and the stage is called dormancy. Whenever the favorable conditions are available, you must be knowing favorable conditions for germination are adequate moisture, oxygen and suitable temperature. So when they get these conditions, they germinate, otherwise they remain in dormant stage. Now let us see development of fruits. As ovule matures into seeds, the ovary develops into fruit. All these development takes simultaneously. That is, the transformation of ovule into seeds and ovary into fruit proceeds simultaneously. The wall of the ovary develops into the wall of fruit, which is called pericarp. We have seen this in chapter 1. The fruits may be fleshy also, like in guava, orange or mango, or it may be dry, like groundnut and mustard. Many fruits have evolved mechanisms for development of for dispersal of seeds. In most plants, by the time fruit develops from the ovary, other floral parts degenerate and fall off. However, in a few species such as apple, strawberry, cashew, etc., the sometimes thalamus may also contribute to fruit formation. But if the fruit is formed other than the ovary part, then it is called false fruit. Okay. So the fruits which are developing from thalamus, they are called false fruit. Most fruits, however, develop only from the ovary, and such fruits are called true fruits. Although in most of the species fruits are the results of fertilization, we know that fruits is formed after fertilization only. But again there is some exception. There are a few species in which fruit develops without fertilization. So this also happens in nature. Okay, the fruit is developing without fertilization. This is important term. So such fruits are called parthenocarpic fruits. For example, banana. We can see there is no seed in banana. So banana is one such example. Parthenocarpy occurs in nature also, naturally also, but it can be induced through the application of growth hormones, and such fruits are seedless. So if the fruit is formed without fertilization, they are known as parthenocarpic fruits. In this you can see apple as a false fruit, and strawberry also. You can see in this diagram the dicot seed also, and monocot seed is also there, which is maize. Now the two more important terms are also there, which are known as apomixis and polyembryony. Let us see what are these. As we have seen, some plants produce seeds without fertilization. As we have earlier seen that fruits formed without fertilization are called parthenocarpic fruits, and now seeds produced without fertilization, then this process is called apomixis. So some plants produce seeds without fertilization. This process of seed formation is known as apomixis. Actually, apomixis is a kind of asexual reproduction, which is behaving like sexual reproduction, mimicking sexual reproduction. In some species, apomixis occurs as the diploid egg cell is formed without meiosis and develops into embryo without fertilization. In some varieties of citrus and mango, the nucellus cell divides and protrude into embryo sac to develop into embryos. It means more than one embryos are formed. In such cases, each ovule may contain several embryos, and this condition is called polyembryony. So in this slide, we have seen two terms, apomixis and polyembryony. Actually, there is some problem in hybrid varieties. What is this problem? Let us see. Hybrid varieties of several of our food and vegetable crops are being extensively cultivated. Cultivation of hybrids has tremendously increased productivity, so they are necessary also. But one of the problems of hybrid is that, listen carefully children, that hybrid seeds have to be produced every year. If the seeds collected from hybrids are sown, the plants in the progeny wall segregate and do not maintain hybrid characters. Production of hybrid seeds is costly, and hence the cost of hybrid seeds become too expensive for the farmers. If these hybrids are made into apomix, there is no segregation. So apomixis is the solution for the farmers to produce hybrid seeds every year. So instead of producing hybrid seeds every year, they can produce apomix. So there is no segregation of characters in the hybrid progeny. Then the farmers can keep on using the hybrid seeds to raise new crop year after year. And he does not have to buy hybrid seeds every year. So because of this importance of apomixes in hybrid seed industry, active research is going on in many laboratories around the world to understand the genetics of apomixes and to transfer apomictic genes into hybrid varieties. So children, apomixes is important for producing hybrid varieties of fruits and vegetables and also for increasing crop yield multifold, means many times. So children, in this video we have learnt about gamete formation. In the previous video we have learned about gamete formation and pollination, and in this we have learned so many things like outbreeding devices, pollen pistil interaction, artificial hybridization, double fertilization, seed formation, apomixes and polyembryony. So children, I hope you understand well this chapter properly and go through the questions given to you and try to solve them. Okay, see you in the next video. Goodbye.